Thank you. We just had a chance to spend some time with Herb
Okay.
and to talk about a little bit of the Layfield family and the Layfield legacy, and very much part of that Layfield legacy
Yep.
is your husband, Billy.
Yeah.
Was that something that was inbred with him, that he was going to be a racer along the lines of his brothers?
From the time that I met the man,
Yeah.
that's all that he thought about.
Yeah.
He went to the races with his brothers,
Yeah.
and I went with him as the years passed on. And he ended up racing for 52 years, so he must have loved it.
Unbelievable. 52 years. Now, you do have memories of going with Billy to State Line Speedway?
Yes, I do. In fact, I was thinking about today what I was going to tell you about, and I don't know, Dean was very inventive. And he had a big old black Cadillac. And of course, most people either had a trailer or tow chained or something like it. But Dean took and on the back of the trunk, he put a hoist. And he towed his stock car to the races with that hoist with that Cadillac, and everybody could sit inside in luxury. And he ended up selling it to Bill, and that's what Bill was towing with. So we'd go to the races, and I don't even know what year Cadillac it was, but it was a lot of fun.
When you went to State Line, and there were some people who ran it, like Leonard Briggs and the Franks. Do you have independent recollection of Leonard? And
There's vague memories, but I know that Alice and I, that's Dean's wife, her and I took and worked at the check-in where the guys come into the pits.
Mm-hmm.
We worked there, and then her and I kept score. So it was basically the things I remembered the most about, going there and meeting everybody. And
as the check-in, so just so I know how that worked, there'd be a booth. I'm visualizing sort of a booth, or at least an entryway into the pits.
Yep.
And that's where you guys would be to see who came in.
Right, and sign them in.
Would you pay them then, or for appearance fees? Do you get involved in the money aspect?
No, there was somebody that we just signed them in and seen how many people they had with them and so on.
Did they pay you their pit fee?
I can't remember. Not me individually. They might have Alice, but I can't remember. I'll be very honest with you. But I know there was a lot of things happened in '65. I was telling Craig over the phone. They had a thing that year. Maybe you want to check with Squirt Johns and some of the other guys, because I can't remember exactly how it went. But in 1965, if you had new tin on your car, and you came for the first 6 weeks, you'd get a $100 bonus. And I can't remember whether it was if you finished or if you started the feature or if you won the feature. But it was quite a thing. They had it between State Line and Erie that year.
Okay.
So Bill went out and bought a '65 Buick. It was wrecked, and he had a fantastic year that year. He won 35 features, and traveled all over the place, and among them was State Line and Erie.
Yeah. When you and Dean died in 1961, did Alice continue her interest in the racing after that?
No, in fact, she went to California,
Okay.
and she moved out there, and she remarried, and she passed away out there.
There's a question we forgot to ask. Herb said he once drove Dean's 9/16th car. At State Line. Do you recall whether anybody ever drove Dean's car after he died? Was there anything done with the use of the car?
I really can't remember. I think that it was just, I can't remember. I seriously can't remember. Herbie probably could have answered that question.
Yeah, we'll probably have to call him on the way back, because it was just, we were with him for an hour, and he said everything around it except we didn't ask the question. When Dean died in 1961, what was the story about how that happened?
Well, there's been a lot of different things said on that, but I know that day that he went to the races, Bill always went with him, and that day he did not.
Oh.
And we got a telephone call, and Bill took off and went up to Perry and on to Warsaw to the hospital. And the only thing that we knew that day was that that Dean had taken and come off him the straightaway into corner number 1, and he kept right on going, and canteened a field. And they figured that a stone come up and hit him. He had a black and blue spot, or a mark, on his head by his temple, and just one on his chest where the seatbelts were. Other than that, that's the only marks he had on him. So, but they said that the head damage was extensive.
Right. Right.
So he lived for a couple of days up in the hospital, and they had transferred him up to Buffalo. And it just nothing they could do for him.
Right. 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 So the funeral itself was what was the reaction of the drivers and the racing community?
There was a vast amount of flowers. Oh, you wouldn't have believed the flowers and the people. I mean, it was just tons and tons of people. It was vast, and everybody loved Dean.
Right. What was he like?
He was a character. I picked on him. But
What was unique about that character?
oh, he was just Dean. He was funny. He was silly. Just a person that you could take and laugh with, and he was just a good guy. Everybody got along good with him.
The Layfield family racing group. Your husband. Was there a sense of familial competition, or I'm going to go out and beat that son of a gun today? And
Well, I think there's always competition when you have brothers, but
yeah.
but in fact, I've got 3 sons, and Joe's raced for over 30 years, and John he's raced some, but he has the go-kart track down here in Allentown, and then my son Glenn, he's raced some the last few years, so it's inbred in them. I think they love it.
Yeah. Were you concerned at all about Billy's safety after what happened to Dean?
Yes. Yes. There's always that fear.
Right.
And I can remember one time he rolled over, and it scared me to death.
Right.
But especially when I seen the car. But it's one of those things where you just have to, I guess, go with the flow. Just not
Did it
pay.
affect him?
I did. I think so in a way.
Yeah.
In a way, yeah. But he kept on racing. He just loved it. He really did.
State Line Speedway, back to that specifically. What was your sense of the Speedway, of maybe even some of the characters who drove there? Did you have relationships with some of them?
Oh, yeah. I have fond memories of a lot of the drivers and a lot of the people that I met. And I mean, I think back about, Kyle Russell and Squirt Johns and Pezzamenti, and, there was a bunch of them that, they're all good guys, and you think about all the things that's happened in the years since, and the ones that's just like I got an email from Ford that said that Jackie Soper was bad. And, you think about different ones like that, and how there's been so many that's passed on.
Right. Did you have a relationship such that after the races, the pits would be open? Oh, let me back up. I understood that having females in the pit area was rare.
There was no women allowed in the pits. I mean, Alice and I, as soon as they got in to the pits, we went to the scoreboard scoring. There was no women allowed in the pits.
So you were as close as they got.
Why do you suppose that was, that women weren't allowed, Betty?
I don't know.
What were they afraid of? Or?
I don't know. I guess they wanted it to be a man's world.
Did the wives want to be in the pits?
There was probably certain ones that would like to, but me, it didn't make any difference to me.
How were you selected? Was there a sense that Dean, because of his relationship with with Leonard Briggs and Company?
Well, I am under the impression, I don't know how to, I've heard it from several people, that Dean helped set up that track.
Oh, really?
And so I think that when they were trying to organize it and so on and so forth, that's when they said, well, Alice could take and do this, and Alice could do that, and Alice said, will you help me score? And so that's how I got involved.
Was Dean one of the marquee drivers, in the sense that, you know, you always like to have an event and you got one or two or three drivers that you like to promote? Was Dean one of those guys?
Oh yeah, Dean was really, they really promoted him back in the days, because it was just one of those things where he'd come from the back of the pack up through, and he just seemed like he knew right where to go and how to go, and he went from back to front. So he was a good driver, absolutely.
So with his success, the state line certainly was encouraging him. Did you get a sense from either Billy or Dean that the economics of going to state line were better than other tracks, so that the purse might be better?
Well, they had a nice purse for back then, and
Right.
of course they had a lot of different things going on for promotions and so on and so forth. Different races, special races. I think if the truth is known, I believe that State Line was the beginning of the late model racing in this area. Because they're the ones that actually promoted it.
Now, is that something that Dean promoted?
No, this was after Dean had died.
Okay, I see.
And well, like I say, it started in '65.
Okay.
So,
When did Billy start racing at state line?
50, he raced 58 for sure. And I'm trying to think, he was in the service, but I think he came home and he raced a couple times when he was home on leave. So there was different times. So I'm going to say he raced as long as, or as much down there as 56. So, but it's one of those things where there's so many tracks, so many places he's been. Like one time, him and we sat down, and Bradford wanted to write an article on him, and they asked me to figure out how many tracks Bill had run. Well, we sat down and figured out, this was in 1972, we figured out that he'd raced 50 different tracks in 5 different states plus Canada.
Wow.
So
That was in '72, and he raced another 30 years beyond that.
Yep.
Unbelievable. And obviously, this is very much part of your life. Again, going back to state line for a second, you mentioned that you and Alice were scoring. What did that mean?
That meant that you better get it right, because them guys, they were, you know how a guy will come up and say, I know I finished third.
Right.
So
How did it?
Where did you do your scoring from, Betty?
up in there was a score place up in the top, up there they had a place where you could score.
Who else was up in that scoring booth besides you and Alice?
Announcer.
What do you remember about Lloyd Williams, the announcer?
Actually very little. I mean, it's just one of those things where I remember different people there.
And Billy, as he raced at all these various tracks, did he find himself liking state line? Was there any favorites, I should say, of tracks?
Oh, he liked State Line a lot.
Yeah.
He really did. It was a good track. And we went there every chance we got. And of course, like I say, he raced other tracks around, and like, it's just one of those things. It was an excellent track, and we enjoyed it. And it always tickled me the way they had the 2 sides of the track, you know. And I remember back in early days, they could drink on one side and they couldn't on the other. So,
This particular article I find interesting, talking about the Australian Pursuit race, where a winner must not allow himself to be passed by any other car at any time during the race. Any car that is passed is eliminated and must retire to the pit area. That's kind of a wild thing.
yeah, that was a lot of fun.
Was that used a lot?
Yeah, in fact, speaking of the Australian Pursuit, the last race that Dean ever completed was in Australian Pursuit in Perry.
Okay.
That was the last race, and they took a picture of him, and it didn't turn up. But that was the last race that he completed.
Wow.
It was an Australian Pursuit.
What other, as you sat in the stands, and obviously for a number of years, and I'm thinking again specifically State Line, were there some incidents on the track, or whether it's a bad wreck or something that was funny, kind of a vignette, you would say, oh, Greg, you can't believe this actually happened?
Oh, there was a lot of crazy things, but I mean, probably one of the funniest ones, but it wasn't at State Line, it was at Hornell. Bill had the 65 Buick, and he had twisted an axle, and the announcer announced that he wasn't going to be able to race. And so come time for the intermission to be almost over, out come Bill around the track, and I thought, where in the world did he get parts for that? And the announcer came back and asked everybody to kind of pray a lot. His brand new 65 Buick was out in the parking lot, jacked up without an axle. So that's my funniest story. I love it. Number one, it wouldn't fit nowadays, and number two, nobody can give you a part off a brand new car.
Right.
But
That's incredible.
But things like that happened all the time. I imagine they happened at State Line, and I just never heard about them.
Yeah.
But
So really, when I reflect back on the history of State Line and Betty Layfield, you were there at the beginning,
almost.
the 50s.
Yep. Yep.
Al, you tag along with Alice, and were there times when you tag along with Alice when Billy wasn't racing?
Oh yeah, we took and had a lot of fun together. Herb's wife and Alice and I, we all got along really well.
Yeah.
Yep. We sent a lot of racetracks.
I bet.
You went to 70-some racetracks also, right? Or 50-some, whatever it was,
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
You had some good family time with kids.
Oh yeah.
Taking the kids with
Yep.
you.
My kids always liked to go, and if my oldest son was here, he could take and tell you all the memories he had of things, but of course he wouldn't go back to the early days, and
Right.
might go back into the 60s.
Betty, we heard how Dean got his car number and how Herbie got his car number. How did Billy get 21 and then later 121?
Well, that's quite a history. Bill, like I say, from the time I can ever remember, he wanted to race, and back then you had to be 21 to be able to race. Or you had to have somebody sign for you. Well, Dean signed for him so that he could race. But when he got to be 21 and he had his own car,
Yeah.
there
I
come
get it.
21. And they went to State Line, and somebody else had 21. So he said, I just had this all painted, I'll just put another one in front of it. So that's where 121 came
There
in.
you go.
This says State Line 1958-21. Did you get a sense that every year did they have to kind of certify that they had a number? I mean,
Oh yeah.
Okay.
But it got to be the point where everybody knew Dean's number, everybody knew Herb's number, everybody knew Bill's number, and they pretty much, that was it,
interesting. There were other Layfields who raced. I'm thinking the name was Rex. Was that one?
Yeah, that was Bill's brother. He lived in Alabama,
Oh, I see.
and he had a son named Billy, and Billy raced down there. And Connie raced some, and I'm trying to think. And I think Jerry raced a little bit.
What's the age difference between Bill and Herb and Dean? How does that go?
Well, There was exactly 10 years between Bill and Herbie. Herbie's 10 years older than Bill.
Okay.
And Dean, oh my goodness, I can't figure it out, but I know that I had to laugh because Dean had a daughter that was in the same grade as I was in high school. So,
Okay, so Dean would be quite a bit older than.
right, he was
Bill.
he was old enough to be Bill's dad.
I understand, okay. What did Bill do for a living?
Body work, garage.
Was this his garage here?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
Did he keep many memorabilia? Do you have much memorabilia from the old racing days? Programs, picture. I mean, I got a couple of pictures here, but
Well, there was different things that we've kept, but we've had quite a bad experience. Bill was always one to, people would come and look at the scrapbooks and then they'd say, oh gosh, I could take and look at these all day long. Oh, take a couple of them home. Well, some of them come up missing, so
yeah.
that made it hard. And some brought them back and some didn't.
Yeah.
And some of the ones that have come up missing are ones that were back in the older days.
Sure.
So that made it hard. And whoever's got them, I don't know why they don't bring them back. It's more important to me than I'm sure they are to them.
Absolutely. Movies. You ever see movies of Billy racing?
Yeah, he's got lots of them, but they're mostly, there's nothing from State Line.
Mhm.
They're mostly from tracks in the last 15, 20 years he raced.
Imogene mentioned one movie, and she doesn't know where it might be, which would have had Billy and Dean's father in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if that's something you would have, or you'd know where that might be.
I have it, but I don't know exactly where it is. Now, if Joe was here, he'd know right where it was.
Right.
But it's taken in on Steam Valley Road in Portville.
Mhm.
That's when they had the track there in Portville. It was back in the jalopy days.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What would be interesting, because it would have probably one of the few movies of Dean.
Yeah, I think there's Dean and, not sure, I think there's Dean and Herb and then it shows the father, their father. But like I say, I'm not sure where it is. I would like to be able to get it out and show it to you, but I don't know where it is.
Well, we'll probably not lose the thought here. One of the things we are doing, I think I mentioned you on the phone, we are doing a documentary, and our goal is in next September up in Jamestown. We'll have you and Herb and Imogene can come in a car on a Sunday and come to Jamestown. We'll have the world premiere of this sort of State Line Speedway the first 10 years. And we've been getting pictures, like this, so that we can get a full flavor of it. One of the things we are kind of missing is the video component of State Line. We're asking everybody,
Yeah.
and to the extent that Joe could find and we could get a copy or make a copy, because we do that. What we do is, people are very gracious about letting us use the pictures, and Randy's scans everything and gets the originals back within a couple of days, and same likewise in the movies, because we'd love to be able to show the ultimate history. In this case, even though it wasn't at State Line, there's probably not many movies of Dean.
Well, and it's such a short, it's maybe 5 minutes is all it is. It's very
long
short.
to us.
In a
That's a long time.
in a
Yeah.
50-minute video, I mean, we
Yeah.
probably used 10, 20 seconds of it, but
Yeah.
just to see a picture movie.
Yeah.
So you've whetted our appetite.
Well, if Joe comes back in, I'll have him see if he can find it.
Yeah, what we do it's probably on a VHS. We'd make copies for you to have a DVD and. Just
Oh, that would be wonderful.
We can do that.
Yeah.
We have that ability. As you reflect back on State Line, if we were to mention a few names like Squirt Johns or Bobby Schnars or Jim Scott, What's that mean? Do any of those names kind of jump out saying,
Oh yeah, all of them.
yeah.
Yeah, I remember them all. And
Anything unique about, let's say, Squirt Johns?
oh, just that he was just a super nice guy.
Yeah.
Just a nice guy. And just about all the guys that raced down there were nice guys. You know, you look back and you think about them, and I don't remember a lot of bickering and fighting among them. They seemed to be very agile with one another, you know.
When Billy and Dean would drive out the state line, and would they talk about some of the competitors as, man, if that guy's really tough to beat, or sort of somebody who stood out from the rest?
Well, like you mentioned, a lot of names, and those are real good names. Those were excellent competition. Excellent
Squirt
competition.
Johns.
Yep, excellent. And there was a lot of real good drivers. Bobby Schnarr's excellent driver. And they just were all good competition. You know, you don't mind good competition.
Right.
Good competition is good.
What were the economics of it all, Betty? Did Billy feel like he ever made any money in this sport, or was it just a hobby?
Oh, back in the early days, you could actually, if you watched what you were doing, you could take and break even.
Right.
But nowadays it's impossible. There's so much big bucks go into it,
Right.
and it's not fun like it used to be.
Right.
I mean, shoot, I can remember going to M&W Tire Company and getting recaps, and going to a junkyard and getting a motor, and you know, things like that. And you just don't do things like that anymore.
Right.
So were you the gopher some of the time when they were working on the car and they
Oh,
needed
yeah.
parts and
Oh, yeah.
they elected you to run here and run there?
Been there, done that. Changed tires. Back in my youth, I could change tires. Not now.
So you were interested in it.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. It was a good time.
What Billy do? I mean, I just mentioned the Autobot. Did he do anything else? Or was it basically his own independent contract type guy?
Well, he took and did body work in the early days, and as the years passed, he took and had used cars,
Right.
and that's basically what
Yeah.
got us going. But a lot of tough times through the years, like anybody else,
Right.
but they always seem to come out.
Yeah, I'm sure good because of you, and there's always a strong woman behind all that. At least that's what Imogene said.
Well, Imogene is a wonderful woman.
Yeah.
She really is.
Tell me about Dean's family, Alice. What was she like?
She was a very nice lady. She worked hard. She worked at the bank in Wellsville. Very nice lady. Took excellent care of her children. And that's been a very sad thing. Her family has been very sad. And I don't know, you probably aren't interested in what happened to the Dean's family.
We are.
Yeah.
Well, Alice's father had what they thought was MS, and she took care of him for years. And then after he passed away and Dean died, and she moved to California, she started getting sick and she thought she had MS. Well, she didn't. She had what they called Alexander's disease. And she started crippling, and as the years went on, she passed away. And her daughter Donna died with it, and her son Jimmy died with it. And then her son Danny had malignant, what do you call it, where the malignant hypothermia, and he died.
Sure.
And their daughter Betty Jean died with what Alice had, and now their daughter Lucille is living in California, and she has it. So that's their whole family.
Highly genetic.
Wow. So that's the history of Dean's family.
That's sad.
So other than the one who's Lucille, that's it. I mean, that's
That's the only one of the children. They have grandchildren.
Yeah.
And in fact, one of the boys has the same thing right now. So it's a horrible disease, that's for sure.
Yeah, golly. Around here, what's the Layfield name mean today? If I go down to whether it's Wellsville or stop in the store in Allentown, I mentioned the Layfield. Does that mean?
They know who we are.
Is there a racing legacy that still?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's just like when Bill passed away. I was just overwhelmed with the amount of people that came. They said that I didn't see it, but I know I sat there and I greeted a lot of people. But they said that the line was way down from the funeral home, way down to over a block, people waiting. So
This has been terrific.
I don't know whether I've helped you or not.
You really
Are you able to cut out the parts that
we have about
add it?
30 hours of film to get down to an hour, so we'll
Yeah.
do something. But this has been terrific.
We didn't know about you and Alice checking in cars. We didn't know about you and Alice scoring. This is all brand new information.
Yeah.
Did you get paid for your work?
For $10.
Now, when we look over the programs from State Line in those years, it says scorer, but Leonard Briggs is always listed as the scorer.
Well,
Was he up in the booth with you?
Yeah.
Okay, so it was Leonard and then you
Yep.
two.
Yep. Yep.
I wondered how one person could possibly score all the cars by themselves. Well, you've answered it.
Yeah.
You can't.
No. But there's a lot of things enter into scoring.
Yeah, could you explain how to score a race?
Well, you take and you have to be right at the line. And you have to take and watch them as they come across. And you have to write fast
So you're writing down every number as
Every
they come by.
as they can.
And Alice is doing the same thing, and Leonard is doing the same thing. And that's how you can compare if there's a discrepancy. But every lap you're writing them down.
Yeah, every lap.
But they're coming by so quickly.
Well, you get so you can see where they're coming, and you know they're coming. Like there might be one here, and you write it down. The next one you can see them coming, right there. You know.
Now, did you have to develop some sort of a shorthand, or were you just quickly writing car numbers?
You write fast.
Just quickly car numbers.
Right. Sometimes the numbers didn't look too hot, but we could read
You
them.
can read 'em.
Wow. Seems like an impossible job.
Well, after a lot of years, you get to the point where I could take and tell who won and who came in second, third, fourth, fifth, right up here. I'd know the whole field.
Did you go on to work at other racetracks?
Oh yeah, I worked at Bradford, and I'm trying to think if I know I worked at Bradford and Smithport. But other than that, but it was too hard. They've asked me before to take and keep score after the boys started racing, and I says no way. I says I can't keep track of 3 kids and score 2. So,
Were there any disputes when you're keeping track of?
oh, absolutely, absolutely. There was always, but we'd say here, compare them. There are all 3 of them right here. You know, yeah, check it out.
Oh, so you actually had a checks and balances.
Absolutely.
So the 3 of you would be doing it.
Mm-hmm.
You, Alice, and
Leonard.
Leonard.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'll be darned.
Yep.
We got to give her more credit, you know, in the scorecard.
I'm glad we're learning all of this stuff. It changes everything.
Yeah, there's a lot of things about the scoring that a lot of people don't understand how hard it is, and they think, oh, I know that so and so came in third because I watched that car. Well,
Did the guys, flagmen, keep track of the laps, or how was that being communicated down to the flagman?
well, they usually had a second person down there,
I see.
and they kept track of the laps.
Okay. So he's blowing in the flagman's ear, 5 laps, 2 laps, whatever.
Yep.
I'm just thinking of those 100-lap races. My gosh, it's just,
Oh yeah, they were something else. Those were the hard ones to score.
Yeah.
You got so you were FT, flat tire. So you'd know when they went to the pits. If they went to the pits, they had a flat tire.
Oh, and then you got to pick them up again when they come back.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, they'll be, yeah, all right. Now, when it was time for the drivers to get paid at the end of the night, were you and Alice involved in the payouts?
I believe Alice was, but I wasn't.
Okay.
It's like I say, it's been a long time.
Yeah, we understand this is 60 years ago.
My memory isn't as good as it used to be.
very good. What'd Billy think was his highlight?
His highlight? Well, probably one of the biggest highlights that I can remember him really being ecstatic about is the first year they had a Dean Layfield Memorial Race. He won it.
Yeah.
And he was
At what track?
No, not Mills. Woodhull.
Woodhull, okay.
And he was very thrilled that he'd won it. It just really meant a lot to him.
Yeah, we had to ask you what track because every track had a Dean Layfield Memorial after he died.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yep.
Do you know if any of the tracks are still having a Dean Layfield Memorial?
I think the closest one to having the Dean Layfield Memorial Race is at Smithport, and what they do is they've combined some different ones and have a memorial race.
And there's been some memorial races for your husband as well.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yep.
That ought to tell you something.
Yeah, that's quite an honor.
The
to-
respect that this family has.
Yeah, he loved racing, that's for sure. He really loved it.
What'd he die of?
Pneumonia.
Did he?
Pneumonia and stubbornness. I begged him to go to the doctors and he wouldn't go.
Mm-hmm.
So, stubbornness.
Now, he was a pretty big guy, wasn't
Yes, he was. Yeah.
he? And bigger than Herb's not that big. This didn't.
Oh, Bill was a big man.
Big
A
man.
big man, yeah.
Is he the biggest of the Layfields? I mean,
Yeah. Yeah, he was in all the last about 15, 20 years, he had got very heavy. He was diabetic and he had problems. And but he still liked his Hostess Twinkies. Everybody teases Bill about that.
Oh?
But another thing they used to pick on him about, they said, one thing about Layfield cars, he's got them every place it needs to be fixed, it's at least wired. And so we had a deal going on, great big massive roll of wire. And he put a bolt down through it and put it on top of his car one year.
No
and he
kidding.
says, it's amazing how many people use wire.
that's good. That's good. Dean Layfield, if you had to describe physical appearance, I'm not sure anybody's ever done that for us. Tall, small, wide.
He was, I'm going to say 5'9" maybe, and small in structure. Wasn't thin, but he was small. He didn't have much hair,
Mm-hmm.
and I called him curly and he hated it. But I probably was the only one that ever got away with
I
that.
was going to say.
But it's one of those things where he was just he was built about like you,
But with my hair.
less. He tried everything to grow it back too. Anytime anybody would tell him anything, he'd try it.
we also have kind of learned that he didn't mind. I don't know if the term showmanship, but a self-promoter, and I say that in a positive sense. Do you get a sense of that at all?
Oh, Dean liked to take and encourage a lot of different things. He was a promoter.
Yeah.
It's just like when I mean, how many people have ever taken and got a car given to them, and they take off and go to Florida and race last year on the sands and drive the car down, race, come in 12th, turn around, drive the car back home.
I love the story.
Yep. So there's not too many people that do that.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of, he promoted a lot of stuff back then. He encouraged a lot of special races and ideas and having different things get together and people, different kinds of races. And it was fun back then.
Yeah. Did he? I know he started this sort of independent race association. Do you know why he did that?
No, I'm probably Herbie could have answered that
Well,
question.
He gave us a sense of it, but
Yeah.
I always wondered whether that was maybe letting the track promoters, the guys who owned the tracks, know that there were alternatives. I just sort of, I don't want to say a union, but kind of saying we have a little bit of a power ourselves because we're still the guys that drive the track.
Well, I think that was to take and encourage the guys as a group to stay together.
Right.
But I said, I've seen through the years, I've seen a lot of things, but only once do I ever remember the guys ever totally sticking together at one track. Mm-hmm. That was at Woodhall. Mm-hmm. And they were upset because the late models weren't getting paid. They'd gone more to the modifieds. So the guys all drove their cars out on the track, turned them off, got out of the car, and went up and sat in the stands. Every single one of them. Not one of them backed down. And they got their way.
Cool.
But that's the only time I ever remember them really sticking together.
Yeah. You remember that?
No, but she describes the nature of a race car driver. Very independent.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about what's good for me, and not necessarily what's good for the guys that are parked on the side of me.
Mm-hmm. But they got, all of the drivers got along good.
Yeah.
Of course, you always had somebody that was, that, how come you ran into me? I didn't run into you, That's been racing for years.
And always will be.
Yep.
Yeah, well, every time you watch a NASCAR race, inevitably there's something.
Yeah, isn't that,
Can't help it. It's
isn't
the
that the
nature.
truth?
Do you recall when you would go into the tracks after the races at all, or in the pits after, there was some sort of emotion?
Oh, sometimes there was, and sometimes it wasn't. A lot of times it was just a lot of people getting together, maybe celebrating the fact that somebody had won, and they were all gathered around, and everybody was happy and talking, and it was a lot of fun times. Yeah. It really was. Back then, it was a lot of fun times.
Is there a legacy of the Layfield family racing? Is there? Can you describe it at all?
I think it's just something that it started as a hobby and ended up being something that they all love.
Yeah.
It's just a sport that they love. Yeah. And it started with jalopy racing, and it's going on today. Yeah. They all love it.
Is there a next generation? You mentioned your son's race. Is there a next generation likely to be involved?
Well, I have a Dean Layfield, and he did race, but he got married and sold his race car. Can you imagine that?
Women.
No, he said he couldn't afford a stock car and a house, so he preferred the house.
And his wife probably.
So do you have any grandchildren that are involved in the sport?
Not right now. I have a 6-year-old who races go-kart.
There you go.
There you go.
It's going to continue. We just know it's going to.
But that's the next generation.
That's the one I wanted to know about, yep.
Yeah.
Oh, this has been great. Thank you for letting us impose
Well,
on your time here.
I appreciate you coming, and now how about that cup of coffee I promised you?
Well, a little bit would be great, yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
Sure, sure.
That.